And I want to jump right into our next talk. And for this, I'd like to bring on Sandeep, who is the co-founder of Polygon. We're going to try to spice things up a bit and talk about what's on his mind. And for this one, if somebody has any questions, you can go on that side and tell it to one of our team members, and we'll communicate those questions to me so we can make sure that we still get to answer some of these questions. But without further ado, let's welcome Sandeep.
Thank you. Yeah, I was telling Kartik that let's make it spicy. Like otherwise, these panels and these will become boring for you guys also. So if you have any spicy, any controversial question to ask, feel free to shoot. And interrupt us anytime. Like anytime during the event, just interrupt us and we'll come to you. Probably. Maybe Kartik doesn't.
This may not work out well for me, but we'll see. All right. Well, we'll try our best. The part about Pragma that I like is that it's actually meant to be small, so we actually can have these types of experiences. Just before you came on, or the very first talk, we had Stani, and we're just throwing socks at people as swag. That's the first thing, and we get to do that. So the distance helps, and the small group helps. So we'll make this interactive to the best we can. But let's start with a mild question. We're not going to get spicy immediately. You just finished the POL transition. Looks like it went well. No issues. Maybe some confusion that people will have.
Yeah. Either no issues or nobody cares.
And I hope it's the first one, right? Yes. If you had to do this transition all again, would you do something differently? What was the hardest part of doing this multi-month-long and actually multi-year-long transition? Because the Polygon change was 2 years ago.
It's hard to say. Like, I mean, we tried to. The main, kind of blocker was the exchanges only, like the centralized parties, and many of them had to, schedule it. They also don't have all this visibility, and their engineers, like when they can schedule it and all that. So probably we could have given maybe, so basically 6 to 8 months back, we have been trying for the exchanges that, okay, we want to do this and when do we want to pick it up and all that. Nobody was giving us time slots like what they are comfortable with. Eventually I said okay, screw it. We are going to announce a date. After that, whichever exchange follows. If they don't follow, they don't follow. We announced a date. And then few exchanges already started coming in. Other exchanges you should have given us more time. And
2 years is not enough. Yeah, we need more.
We give you time. And then we said guys, this is the date, 4th September, we are going and all that. And as late as 2 weeks before, one or two of the exchanges actually, kind of finally decided that, okay, we want to do it. And I'm not really even sure that why they took so much time.
Yeah, I was going to say, what is the hard part about this thing? They just had to change the database from Matic to POL, and that's it?
Yeah, so on the POS chain, it's very, very straightforward, right? It was the base token of Matic was the base token, so you just do a hard fork, and then the base token is now POL token. On Ethereum, it's where people hold this Matic and they have to manually go through the migration contract. On exchanges also, it should have been even more simpler.
Because they would have done it for everybody.
Yeah, they would have done for everyone. But I think Matic is one of the highest volume coins for them. So they were also very scared to lose this volume. So what they all did is okay, we have Matic and for some time we'll have POL also. Eventually we'll phase out Matic as the volume moves.
Wait, they can do that on the same chain? How would that work?
On the exchange, they have both of these tokens listed
I see. So they just created a second market, but it was not actually settling. Interesting.
Yeah. Because they don't want to lose the all of them are as the volume moves more and more towards POL, then we will remove the Matic. And that for our users is super confusing, right? But it's hard to convince them to lose that $200-300 million volume daily. So that's the problem.
So the lesson here is don't change the name in the future?
Yes. Especially with the token. And other thing is, in Ethereum community, and this is one one part I am these days I'm a little bit unhappy with the how we are going in the Ethereum community, is that we had this token, Matic token, which had upgradable rights initially. But then you remember that when we launched this Polygon POS, this is not an L2, this, that, so everybody came on to us. And then somebody at one point in time also posted, oh, this token has minting and upgradation rights and all that. They're going to do this. And we said, okay, like, and that FUD was getting bigger and bigger. So we, burnt the ownership rights over there. If we had that, we wouldn't have to go through all of this. We would have upgraded that token, right?
I did not know that. That's actually...
Yeah, it's pretty painful. And now you see one of the things like we are all in the Ethereum community is doing, and I think you are one of the voices which should, if you agree with this, is like, everywhere, like I'm coming, like this is my maybe 10, 15th panel here, right? And out of them, 5 or 6 of them have this direct question, are L2s taking value away from Ethereum? And why Ethereum BTC price is going like down? What do you think by the sentiment? And I think the whole Ethereum community is focused on that value on the token, or Ethereum ETH is going down, and what can we do? And due to that, what is happening is in the Ethereum community, amongst the thinkers also, like everybody is like kind of now being pushed to add more and more value to Ethereum. And how do you do that? You do it by like, okay, let's enshrine this thing. Let's do this. Let's do that. Like based on so many things where people are trying to extract as much value into Ethereum base layer. And what happens is that I think that like obviously I'm like building a layer 2, so it's like detrimental to us. So I might be biased. But what I'm saying is like that also starts destroying a little bit of like this protocol builder confidence in the base layer, right? Like you start thinking, okay, whatever I'm building and I spent 6 or 10 years on building something, and then that might be just simply absorbed into the base layer versus like, you see how
that looks threatening, yeah.
Yeah. And then what you do is when you do so many things with the L1, then you are risking the stability, decentralization, censorship resistance of the L1, which I think BTC community has done one thing that very well, that, they have kept the base layer very, very, very simple. They add features, slowly. Of course, we are not saying like make it completely slow, but, Ethereum should be, the leadership in Ethereum community, I'm saying, should be focused on making it a better and better settlement layer. Right, that's the base nature of Ethereum, and I think right now we have a lot of these undue pressures of value and all that. Like, let's keep Ethereum the infinite garden that it is, like, which attracted a lot of people like me and many others in the Arbitrum, like OP and everyone who came to build on top of Ethereum.
So, for my next question, do you think L2s are taking away value from the
this is also a good question. Like this.
No. It's not a good question because it's giving precedence to money being the only outcome that you measure something by, and that's a very short-sighted view. And I do have a question that actually is the right question I want to ask, but I want to dig into something that you just said, which is, okay, let's think about making this a better settlement layer. What, in your opinion, can make something a better settlement layer? Like, what is it they're missing here, and kind of where do you think the attention is not going?
Sure. So for the settlement layer, like there are few things that like any settlement needs, like settlement layer needs, and essentially there are only 2. Bitcoin and Ethereum can compete. Nobody else can compete on that, right? But what are the 2 things? First is decentralization. Like the decentralization is the first measure, and Ethereum is doing well on that.
And you're measuring that by the number of people who are able to run nodes?
Yes, number of people who are able to run nodes and things like that. There are other parameters, I'll come to that, where Ethereum might not be doing that great, but at least on the node, I'm saying at least the strategic focus is at least good on that, right? Okay, we want to do the technology in a way that people can run home nodes, right? So that's one. Censorship resistance is the second biggest thing, right? And we had like this scare 1 year back where suddenly after the merge that, OFAC compliant, blocks went like really, really high, right? And I think like community did some work to, mitigate it to some level, but it's still a little bit there. So as much censorship resistance can come into the base protocol, that's very important. Then I would say another important thing is reorg resistance, right? Like, because that leads to settlement delays, right? Like the more reorg prone the base layer is, the settlement for the layer 2s and other things becomes like, slower. So improve on the settlement layer. Another thing is this proposer builder setup that we have, like, there are like separation, 5, 7 proposers and all that. That is also not good long term, but I'm guessing that, in terms of having concentration amongst few proposals, right? So we should be, like, as Ethereum community, we should be working more on figuring them out. And then only the last thing would be to do, like, have like pre-compiles which help in better, like, easier settlement, cheaper settlement.
Oh, interesting. So you're saying, well, I hadn't thought about that last one. I agree with the others. And now this is like me having a conversation with him and you're listening. But pre-compiles helps with effectively giving an argument that I can actually delegate a transaction to L1 instead of L2 because I'm actually able to sort of now get that off-chain benefit directly in L1. So is that helping your argument for getting a better settlement layer, or is that saying we would like to have more reasons to not even use L2s because you should have the L1 do most of the work or support most of the volume or throughput?
I'm talking about pre-compiles which are, like, let's say ZK settlement based, like ZK based pre-compiles, like some of the hash functions and all that, which can be cheaper and better.
But that leads to basically having a scenario where it becomes equally easy to make the transaction be on L1 instead of the L2. Right?
Which kind
like,
of,
like as in
I'm talking about user transactions, like this is a chain settlement.
I guess what I'm saying is, like, let's say you have a precompile to verify a ZK proof and you kind of get to do recursion or just simple verification faster. Is that not kind of increasing the number of transactions you can do now on the L1 instead of kind of relying on an L2 like or ZK specific rollup and then having that rollup settle once?
I see what you mean. Like I'm not against, like, layer 1 being able to do more transactions, because layer 1 Ethereum as a settlement layer needs also, like, imagine we are able to build in next 5 to 10 years, the industry is able to bring the whole world to Web3. You are going to need more on the settlement
capacity in general.
Right?
Yeah.
So I am absolutely not against, like, L1 increasing the capacity, but increasing the capacity for settlement, right, is more important. And like, while it's important to focus on the value of ETH, but right now maybe it's like because of, like, a lot of, like, challenge that is coming from other layer 1s, like especially, like, let's say Solana and all that. And due to that, like, I feel that this is an uneasiness in the community that, oh, ETH value is also going down. Like, the ETH should pump and everything else is, like, if ETH was still doing well in terms of the price, maybe people will not feel that better.
Then but L2s are great, right?
Yeah. Then L2s are great. And I think these are, like, cyclical, right? Like, I mean, another, like, somebody was asking me that, Solana is doing great in community, and there are, like all these Solana communities popping up all across the world and all that. And I said, do you know ETHGlobal? By the way, like, I mean, we have lived that life, right? 2016, 17, 18, like, ETHGlobal was everywhere, like everywhere ETH events were popping up, and we had that community and all that. And it's not that hard. Like, I can tell you, it's not that hard. Like, Polygon had 150 guilds in 150 cities in the world. Like, it's not that hard to do. But what is hard is, can you have highly motivated community and people join, staying in that community, and new people coming in, old people going out, and still maintain that fabric of community over time. So I would, like, for example, Solana community, like, I have all the best wishes for them, but I would want to have this conversation in 2020, maybe at least 2026, right? And see, like, in 2 years, if the same sentiment remains after one cycle has been crossed, because we know that how much dependent it is on the cycle.
We've seen that a few times to know how the story ends, and the challenging part is, will these people basically go to somewhere else because they're not seeing anywhere from enough traction to the sentiment changes, like, amongst their peers, and they escape.
Yeah, what happens in the next one, like, Monad comes in, and they have, like, now this parallel compute with the EVM and all the thing. Like, what happens can that community stay? They have better UX also there. Can this community still stay? So that's the challenge every project has to go through. And one fun thing about, like, the crypto community, crypto crowd is that everything has a peak in terms of price. I'm saying, like, the price is going and this is the peak. So the same argument that you have on this side of the peak, like, oh, this is great, like, there's a community, they have so much fun, and, like, this, for example, this Vera chain, like, so amazing parties are there, right? And then once the peak is crossed this side, same argument, these guys are only partying, like, they're here to party, like, so, like, these sentiments we should not read too much into it, especially as founders, like, focus on the fundamental stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like a stupid thing to say. It's like things take time, and you have to put in the work and the time. And if things are going well, you kind of see a massive build up, and then immediately it sort of starts working. And you've seen that through Polygon, and we've kind of seen the first 5 years together of each of our sides of this. And but once you kind of really hit that mark, you know exactly what worked and what didn't. I do want to kind of spend some time on the AggLayer thesis. Is any of the stuff that you're doing with the aggregation layer helping address the settlement arguments that you just built in, and kind of tell us like what made you come up with that?
Yeah. So one of the bigger issues, which is like a legit issue on in the Ethereum ecosystem, is that with so many of these chains and liquidity fragmented, there is certain level of user and developer confusion. And I think if we want to build that this trustless internet that we all have envisioned, we need to have two important things. Like the way in Web 2, there is seamless data, connectivity. You land here, you just pick up your Grab and, use your credit card to book the cab and all that, right? Everything in the back end is abstracted. You don't have to, subscribe to Singapore's internet when you come here. But that's not the situation in crypto and in blockchains. I think everybody knows that. And but what I was saying is that in Web 2 there are two important things, like the data and the information is seamlessly can move across the networks. And second thing is that it's infinitely scalable. Practically, I mean, I don't want to say
the big asterisk in there. Yes.
It's a big asterisk, but it's practically infinitely scalable. As many apps want to launch, you won't find somebody who say I want to launch an app, but internet doesn't have the bandwidth for me, right? So they can launch their own servers and launch their apps and all that. If Web3 needs to go to that level in 5 to 10 years, we need to also have these two things: infinite scalability, but while still having that interoperability of value. This is the internet of value, the internet of information. Web 2, Web 3, internet of value. So value should be seamlessly movable, and you should have infinite scalability. So with L2 stacks and all that, I think infinite scalability is there. Fair amount of safe.
And realistically, we're saying what, at least 10 to 20,000 transactions per second and more?
Yeah.
For now?
Yeah, easily combining all these L2 chains, you have literally infinite, and you can launch more and more L2 chains. And I think anybody who's launching a meaningful application and they have confidence in their building abilities, they all are, I can see that they all want to have their own chain. They don't want to be, in fact, one of the very prominent team in Solana, I think, what's their name, called Phoenix. They're very pro Solana people and all that, and they wrote this nice thesis and all that why they are creating their own chain on top of Solana right now. And
this is Solana doesn't have L2s.
Yeah, exactly. So basically the whole thing is Solana has 3,000 TPS, but that is also not enough. The moment you launch your dApp and you have 100,000 users, and if you are building a good UX app, most likely you are paying the gas fees for the user. Suddenly your gas fees bill is through the roof. So eventually you have to go and launch your own chain. If you are building any meaningful consumer application, probably you'll need your own chain. And that is what is happening. You're going to see it more and more, and you're going to have probably tens or thousands of chains. So coming back to the AggLayer thesis. AggLayer thesis is this, that you can launch even million chains on top of AggLayer and connected, and you have practically infinite scalability, but then you have this liquidity fragmentation. So AggLayer is the purpose of AggLayer is that it provides you this safe interoperability guarantees between the chains, and which also gives you, the way it is built is, it also gives you, unified liquidity. So for example, you have 100 USDC here. It is one single token across the whole AggLayer. So when you do a transaction, you just say that, okay, I'm selling my USDT and buying an NFT with that, right? And you can be on chain number 1, and then you are doing this activity on chain number 20, and then you click one transaction.
The balances reflect.
Everything happens in the background. You have the same address across the chain. That NFT is bought, comes back to you on your own chain. Because of this AggLayer's connectivity, and there must be a lot of developers here also. How it works is that all these tokens have one single canonical mapping, right? So whether you have USDC on chain 1 or chain 1000, it's one single token. So it can move. You don't have to have like liquidity pockets that, okay, in order to move USDC from one chain to another, you have to have liquidity on the other chain. It's one single token, right? So it moves extremely fast. You can burn and mint on the other chain like infinitely, and all that is abstracted away. And like so finally, what AggLayer, when you zoom out after listening and hearing all of it, what you realize is AggLayer is something like Solana, but each address is a chain instead of a user address or Solana or whatever chain, like say Bitcoin chain. Each address is a chain itself.
That's a really interesting way to think about it, because it stays unified and then transactions are portable.
Yeah. Yeah, and then those addresses, those chains can interact with each other. That meaning that user interactions on each of those chains can interact with each other. And the design space is just too big. And we are seeing a lot of like middleware builders building intent protocols on top of it, building so many other things like, chain abstraction and all that. And I think like, you can discuss with a lot of researchers in the Ethereum space or outside. And once you discuss about this architecture, I don't know whether it's going to be Polygon's architecture or somebody else's architecture, but for Web3 to go mainstream and really scale on the internet and the end game architecture, people will tell you that this is something that it will resemble to. Whether it's Polygon's or somebody else builds it, hopefully like the next one, people who do, they have a late mover advantage, they build even better designs, but it will look something like this. Like AggLayer.
So I guess for my last question, I want to actually honor the original thing we talked about, which is getting something from the audience. So one question, I do already have him here, is I'll ask this one, and unfortunately we don't have enough time. How do you think we can get more L2s to collaborate with each other instead of being competitive?
By coming to these conferences and having meetings. I've been having those meetings with all those L2s. No, basically having some sort of interoperability standards, if there are. And also the business models, also being complementary. Like for example, a lot of L2s have these sequencer fee share models, right? Whereas AggLayer doesn't have that business model, right? So we can actually integrate with any kind of stack, like OP stack, Orbit stack, whatever stacks are there, they can connect with AggLayer because we have nothing, we don't do anything with the sequencer fees. Like AggLayer believes in the sovereignty of those chains. So, I think like it can only be possible. Otherwise, we can have this like wishful dream that L2s will collaborate, because there is a competition, right? There's a zero-sum game.
It's a business
right? It's a business. The only way to do it is that there is narrative compatibility and the revenue compatibility. Right? Narrative compatibility is harder, but at least like for the projects who are focusing on long-term fundamental value to be generated, like who have seen the narrative cycles once. You can see like we are focused on the fundamentals. For us, if there is a compatibility on the business model on how their network makes value and generates value versus how AggLayer generates value, I think we are finding it much easier to collaborate with layer 2 chains.
Awesome. That's all the time we have, unfortunately, but I want to thank Sandeep for an amazing conversation, and looks like we're going to make the next one even spicier.